Hi everybody, my name is Chris. My pronouns are he, him. My slurs are honky cracker. So I will answer to any of those terms. I got kind of an old-timey sense of humor, but I like talking about modern topics. For example, I just flew in from a conference on the implementation of gender neutrality in the workplace. And boy or girl, are my arms tired. That's for Chris here. Give it up for Chris. Other Chris. Happy Pride Month. Give it up for Pride. I am a straight myself, but I support the LGBTQ community. So much so that I just abstain from sex for all of June. As a straight man, you know? Hetero dudes don't need to be having sex in June. Imagine how hard that must be too. This energy doesn't lie, you know? Actually, a pretty good month, pretty low stress. I got 11 other months to get laid anyway. Well, 10. I also set up February. Because I don't think white dudes need to be having sex during Black History Month. We can sit and reflect, right? White women, on the other hand, might be a good time to diversify that body count, you know? What do you think? I was talking about pronouns before, though. I have been reconsidering mine. I might make the switch to non-binary, mostly because I've accepted that would be the easier standard of masculinity to live up to. You know, like I can admit, I am never going to be the most macho he, him. But don't tell me I would be an extremely butch they, them. I know my brand. I'm not the Marlboro man, but I could be the Marlboro person. I can do some of the things a cowboy can do. No, I can't swing a lasso or ride a horse, but I can play guitar and miss home. And that's half of life on the range right there. You know? I've never wrangled a steer, but I have gotten along with a little doggy. That wasn't too manly for that. Beta male, alpha androgynous. That's the thesis statement. I have kind of been getting into dogs lately. Are you all dog people? Give it up. For your little friends. Never much of a dog guy before, but I'm starting to notice them on the street. I'm starting to say things to their owners. Their dad's walking, a little pop caught my eye, and I innocently said to the owner, "Hey, cute dog." And I never would have expected what he replied with. He said, "She's more than just a pretty face." Yeah, I said, "What do you want me to say to that?" "Okay, hey, your dog has a nice rack." Is that the praise you were looking for? I'm sorry, your dog has a nice set of racks. As Matt reminded us earlier, dog's got like 6 of them. Pretty cool. That's twice the number of the cool chick from Total Recall. You know? If you're a cinema buff. I'm a lifetime Milwaukee, and any other lifetime Milwaukee, give it up. It's a good way to tell people we don't believe in ourselves, right? It's just easier to be here and put in a lower effort. It's kind of how I see Milwaukee. Whenever I travel, though, I find out how outsiders see Milwaukee. There's only 3 things they bring up with me. They either want to talk about beer, cheese, or Jeffrey Dahmer. Right? Those are Milwaukee's 3 claims to fame. They think life here is so bleak, the only way to cope with it is by either drinking our feelings, eating our feelings, or eating our neighbors. Which is true, right? That's why you never want to trust someone who's sober and lactose intolerant in Milwaukee. Because how are they quieting the demons? But I do think growing up in Milwaukee screwed with my head a little bit, because I was like 6th grade when the whole Dahmer thing happened, and as a kid I was into horror movies. I had a real wild imagination, and I told my cousin I was scared, and I asked him, what if this murderer gets out of jail, and what if he comes and kills me? And my cousin said, you don't have to worry about that, he only kills gay dudes. Yeah, and I was like, oh. But then I asked myself, what if I'm gay? And what you need to understand is that's the first time that thought had ever occurred to me. Which means to this day, I can't be entirely certain if my heterosexuality is the product of nature, or if Jeffrey Dahmer scared me straight. And I'll tell you, that's put a little dent in my psyche. No, but as I said before, nothing wrong with being gay. You know, if I were, that's not a big deal. And I do think guys need to stop making fun of everything by calling it gay. I think guys have been doing that for too long. You know, I'm not even saying don't do it ever. I'm just saying save it for when it actually applies. right? Like I can give you an example. I was at a barbecue restaurant with a friend of mine, and I just don't like to get real messy when I eat, so I was using a fork. And my friend called me gay for that. You know, yeah, I get it. Ooh, manners are so gay. You know, it's antiquated thinking. Let's leave that behind. You know, I don't see anything inherently gay about using silverware. But do you know how my friend proceeded to clean off his fingers? Yeah, if you haven't arrived at the image mentally yet, deep-throating each and every one of them. Yeah, all of them in there at once. Every train in the tunnel. And now I found that to legitimately be pretty gay. Because I was extremely turned on. I was like, are you kidding me? How have you never mentioned having no gag reflex before? I just don't even know what to say. The entire fist was in there. It was hot. Spilled a bowl of sauce on my lap. It was like, hey, me next. So let's pull back on the casual homophobia. Also, don't be cock teasers, all right? Use a napkin unless you need it. I'm a former teacher, give it up for that. I knew when to step away. I made it out. That's not easy. Getting out of teaching is as hard as escaping Scientology. Once they got you in there, they got you in there. I had to set aside my large ego and admit that the best thing I could do for those kids was turn around and walk out of their lives for good. That wasn't easy, you know? It's just, I had to admit I'm not a good authority figure. That was my big problem. I always had a really hard time telling my students no, especially when they asked if I was looking to buy weed. Because the answer was usually yes in that case, and I didn't like lying to them. Also, I was relying on the discount they would trade me for a C-. My C's for J's program. I was successful. I think smoking pot made me a better teacher, though. I have evidence to support that. Once I started getting high, all of my students' grades drastically improved. I don't know what it was, just suddenly their essays were a lot more readable. I was like, oh, I get it. If that's not proof enough, this is the first time a student ever gave me an apple. And I knew how to turn it into a pipe and get high out of it. It's perfect. But no, I'm no longer a teacher anymore. I do have opinions on the issues teachers are facing today. One thing I want to say is I do not think we should be giving teachers guns for their classrooms. I think that's a bad idea. Because the entire time I was a teacher, anytime they gave me any new technology for my classroom, I eventually abused it. When they gave me Chromebooks, when they gave me smart boards, it all just became a crutch to maintain my students' attention. And that is exactly what would have happened with a gun. You know, I would have been up there like, hey, can I get a volunteer to read the first chapter, please? Can I get a volunteer for once to read the first chapter, please? All right, look, I want to see some hands in the air right now. Stick them up. This isn't popcorn reading. This is popcorn reading. If you have any questions about the assignment, my office hours are now or never. Or I would just be too high to use it. So either way, don't give a gun to a job that I could do, is what I'm arguing. We got the RNC coming. Give it up for that. Who's excited? We got our tickets. I actually last year, here's the thing about comedy. Sometimes you just got to make compromises, all right? Last year, I was asked if I wanted to perform at a picnic that was like a fundraiser for the RNC. I guess sometimes GOP stands for Grand Old Picnic, over in the park. And like, you can all probably look at me and tell this doesn't align with my political values, right? I'd say it's pretty obvious I'm a non-voter, right? You're not going to force me to have an opinion. The only way I'm showing up at the polls is if there's a weed referendum. But I did agree to take the gig because they offered me more money than the value of my principles. Gotta eat sometimes. And also, I kind of like those shows because they can be a challenge. Like, I knew this one was probably going to have a lot of restrictions about what I could talk about. And I was surprised with how relaxed those ended up being. They sent me an email. They only had one request. They said, you can swear, you can talk about whatever. All we ask is no pedophile jokes. And I found that to be alarmingly specific. Right? Like, if that's just on a list with other things, that's pretty normal. But that by itself makes it sound like there's going to be pedophiles there. And they don't like being teased about it. Hey, come on, this is the one day we get to come to the park. Be nice. Just a bunch of uppity child molesters gathered in the back room about how age of consent should be states' rights. So So I told him, I was like, look, I want you to be straight with me about this. Are there going to be pedophiles there? Because if so, I will need to be paid more for my conscience. And what's weird is they didn't say yes or no. They only asked how much. And I said, well, at least 18%. Sometimes you gotta make compromises. Dude, I like getting on the road to do comedy. That's pretty fun. Sometimes I end up going through scary weather. One time I was on the freeway, real heavy downpour, and I guess I ended up going right through a tornado. Which one's the bad one, watch or warning? Warning, that's where they've seen one. I get those two mixed up all the time because I've never lived in a mobile home. So, just never had to worry too much. Also, I spent a lot of time in basements, so it just hasn't been a priority. But yeah, I went right through a warning, and it said to seek shelter immediately, but I had no clue because the tone they use for severe weather is the same tone they use for an Amber Alert. So I just ignored it, as we all tend to do. You know, my only thought is I was driving and I was like, my God, who is out kidnapping kids in this weather? What a competitor. No days off. You know, I was in awe of the commitment. But then I thought about it a little more. I suppose there's never going to be an easier time to lure someone into your windowless van, right? I mean, you don't even need a bowl of candy when you have salvation to offer. Just ask the Catholic Church.
Bravo.
You guys like that one, right? Okay, good, because they hated it at the Republican technique. I figured I'd gamble on it here. This is a new look for me. I've been growing my hair out. I kind of like it, but it's at an awkward length now. The other day I went out, it was a windy day. I ended up getting so much hair in my mouth, it was like dating a feminist again. Okay, look, I know that one makes me sound like a jerk, but if you think about it a little bit more, it also makes me sound like a good boyfriend. Right? But I have been single for a while. I've been single for so long now, people are saying to me, you will find love when you stop looking for it. And that would be encouraging, but you also hear people say, if you haven't found someone within the first 48 hours, maybe stop looking. You know, it's hard dating for me because I'm not very sexually adventurous myself, and I feel like everyone's a lot braver than I am these days in the bedroom. You know, like, I've never choked anyone during sex, but I have gotten choked up. Because I appreciate it. It's the kind of guy I am. But this one time I was dating this lady, and she like wanted to open me up. You know, she was a little bit more wild than I was. She was like, I will indulge any fetish. And I was like, oh man, I really need a fetish. And this is like too good to pass up. So I'm like, give me a couple days. I hopped on the internet, I sampled some things, you know, I'm like, there's gotta be something. And then I came back to her, I was like, all right, I got it, I'm in, I think this is gonna be good. All we gotta do is figure out how we're gonna get your mom to marry my dad. I just want to feel like a family. Take a lot off to get a load out, you know? That's actually not true. I kind of can't stand step porn. I did check it out, and it just makes me mad at my parents for waiting until after I moved out to separate. If you're kidding me, that's the life I could have had. Could have been hanging out with a cute stepsister instead of a couple who've fallen out of love. That can't have been good for me. All right, I'll leave you on this one. This is kind of a fun joke. I'm always paying attention to like those wacky news headlines. You know, sometimes I get good material out of those. And I only end up clicking them if they make me ask a question. You know, one time I saw one, very brief, very to the point. All it said was, horse semen sells for record price. And I was like, I gotta know more about this. So I clicked on it, and I learned, did you all know this? Apparently the most expensive liquid in the world is racehorse sperm. Yeah, apparently there was an auction where a gallon of Kentucky Derby winning thoroughbred jizz sold for $5 million. Right? And that just made me laugh, because to the untrained palate, that's going to taste exactly like Clydesdale. You are not going to notice the difference. You're just paying for a brand name, you know? Unless you're some kind of horse cum sommelier. All right, you guys have been a lot of fun. Thank you very much. I'm Chris Schmidt. Keep it up for Michael.